Hi there, my name is Sean Cotter, and I am sitting with the filmmakers, Kieran, Matt, and Sheldon from the film CICADA. Welcome, guys. Super excited to have you guys as part of our 37th edition of Wicked Queer. CICADA is one of my favorite films that I've seen in the last like year and a half, to be honest.
Aw.
It kind of really sat personally with me as a survivor of PTSD and sexual assault, and also as a romantic. I kind of fell in love with the sort of the love story, as complicated as it is. So I guess we're gonna unpack it a little bit. So I want to start out with you guys sort of introducing yourself and the roles that you played in the film. If you want to start, maybe Kieran.
I'm Kieran Mulcair. I'm co-director of the film.
Hi, I'm Matt Pfeiffer. I am a co-director and co-writer on the film and an actor.
Hi, peace and love, everybody. I'm Sheldon D. Brown. I am an actor and co-writer in the film.
I mean, so much to welcome, and so much to unpack from this film. I just watched it again this morning just to kind of like freshen my brain with it. We actually been waiting to share this film with our audience since 2020, and so excited to have that opportunity to do that. So tell me a little bit about like what like it's set in 2014, and what was sort of the reasoning for 2014 as a year, and how did this film sort of come into conception?
Well, thanks so much for having us. 2013, I think it starts, right, Kieran?
2012 into
2012?
2013.
Yeah, 2012, 2013. Jerry Sandusky was on trial at this point. He had been in the news a lot. I don't know if you heard of him before this movie,
Mhm.
but he was a pretty big deal there for a second. And during that time, I was vicariously living through that trial because I never had a trial of my own. And that was part of it. And then also, we wanted to do something pre DOMA. So 2012, 2013, we're like, there you go.
Yeah, I mean that whole Sandusky trial is very triggering for myself as well as being a survivor, and I didn't have a trial either, so I totally understand that sort of impetus about it. So tell me a little bit about sort of how the script and the sort of relationship sort of between the two of you, sort of as characters and as sort of co-writers, sort of evolved, because it is really kind of lovely in moments, difficult, complicated, that sort of navigation. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily see a lot of in films about male relationships. Like you guys kind of really kind of went there, which I appreciate.
Thanks. Sheldon and I met back in 2014, 2015, right, Sheldon?
2015. Yeah, 2015.
Uh, September 8th, 2015. No, I don't know. But we met back then. And I wrote this script and I had him in mind very early on. And I finished it. I hit him up. He lived in Chicago. He still lives in Chicago, but not for long. And I was like, hey, if you're ever in New York, I have this project I think you'd be really good for. And he actually happened to be there. He was doing a show, Sleep No More. And we met up at a bar across the street from the stoop that we met. And it was fun time. I sent him the script. We talked about it a little bit, and Sheldon, you want to continue?
Yeah, April of 2015 is when we met. And I actually remember that because I was doing the exact same show in April of 2015 that I did in February of 2018, 3 years later. And Matt reached out to me about this movie that he was working on. And at first I was like, what? Like, why? Why me? Like, I have no idea. Like, Matt had never seen me in anything. And so I was like so confused. I was like, okay, all right, I've never done film before. This sounds cool. And a few months after we had a talk at that bar in Brooklyn, on my way home from a friend's birthday party in Chicago, I got shot in a drive-by shooting. And that completely upended my whole life, you know, and thinking about was I ever going to be able to perform and what that's going to look like. But Matt stayed in close contact with me throughout my time in the hospital and was really very still interested in doing this film. But everything had changed, of course. You know, my body had changed. I lost a lot of weight. I had an ostomy at this point. And so this script ended up taking new life as we really really encountered both of our own traumas as individuals in our own lives, dealing with different types of trauma and building a relationship from that. And you know, our friendship built from collaborating on this project and bringing our experiences together and actually giving it voice. And also, these characters in this film grow because they have different traumas that they're trying to help each other through. And so this film just really just got more personal and more um, more raw, more vulnerable, but also just more honest too.
I mean, you can really get a sense of that in the film too. So there is this sort of the unpacking of the trauma, but there's also this really kind of amazing sort of push for communicating, like speaking to it, and which is I feel often as someone who's experienced PTSD that you don't get enough opportunities to sort of speak about your trauma, sort of like you know authentically. And I feel like that what kind of really attracted me to the film is that there is this sort of authenticity, obviously because it's a very personal story for both of you, um, and there is this sort of move towards catharsis that we get almost there, and there is that sort of hope that we kind of get there at the end, which is kind of really wonderful. And I also love that like the therapy sort of aspect of it is so chaotic. Like that therapist is like she's kind of wonderful in a weird way because it kind of I've never actually been very successful at therapy personally, and I really kind of appreciated the sort of chaoticness that is portrayed in this sort of boho like loosey goosey like therapist with her weird dog Klonopin. um, that kind of a brilliant sort of like dysfunction of a lot of the sort of like the modern almost therapy sort of model. It's kind of interesting. What was your sort of like impetus to sort of portray it that way? Because usually like with trauma sort of recovery, there's always this sort of like therapy is the way to go, and it seemed like you were sort of kind of pushing back at that a little bit.
I'm glad you really like that. The first therapist I ever saw was in college, and I don't know if she was a real therapist. She just seemed like she had a lot going on. I would go into that therapy session, and sometimes I would help her through the day. Like it was tough. And she was doing a lot of different things. Like she was also doing like um I don't know, like different Reiki things on the side. I know she was like very, maybe a little drunk sometimes, but we had this, we had Kobe Smulders come in, and she really just nailed it. I mean, you couldn't ask for anybody better.
No,
Um,
she was so good. I mean, she was really good at sort of this sort of weird, sort of dysfunctional, like, I just want you to just talk to everybody in your next 2 weeks because I'm not going to be here. And that just seemed very like reminiscent of like a lot of the sort of the therapists that are a little too overextended in sort of their practice to sort of help you. And you're kind of looking to them to sort of help you through this. And they're oftentimes not very helpful at all. So I
right.
thought that was really, really kind of wonderful, but also sad for the character a little bit because obviously they Sam needed a little bit more. I mean, sorry, Ben needed a little bit more of that sort of therapy to kind of push him through.
Yeah, the first time I told anybody, um, as an adult, I was in the library at school, and I was on AIM, and AOL Instant Messenger. I don't know if you remember it. And I said to my friend Jill, I said, we were having this conversation, and I kind of just said it. but it wasn't out loud, and it was in this library, and it was, you know, it was quieter than a whisper. It was an instant message. So telling the therapist was half the battle, just saying it out loud with my own voice. And like I said in the movie, she really flushed it down the toilet. So like she heard it and she was like, okay, all right, well, that happens to a lot of people, and you know, like,
Here's,
just
here's the NPR.
made me feel like I wasted it on her. And it yeah, but I've had great therapists since then. Sheldon, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but
Yeah, I think it's so, you know, what I really appreciate about that moment, and a lot of moments in the film, even when thinking about the conversation we have with my dad about sexual assault, and it's so not helpful, you know, and it's very like insensitive in a way. But we as characters are navigating through this world in which we don't always get the sort of support and resources that we need, and how do we navigate through those things. And Ben still finds a way to open up to those around him and bring and put a voice to his pain and struggle, which, you know, in spite of this like kind of really offhanded advice, he finds his way through that, and really finding a way to just be open in a way that that didn't happen for him before. So I love moments in life in which we find ways to kind of navigate around the misdirections that we come across, and sometimes they're from authority figures and people who are supposed to know everything, but you know, you are in control of your own journey, and sometimes you have to navigate for yourself and not trust all of what you hear, you know. So yeah, I really appreciated that. That being said, I've had some great therapists too. I'm in therapy right now, and it feels so good, y'all. I'm telling you. So needed, right? So needed for some, for those in which it works for some people. But yeah, I love figuring out how to navigate through, you know, some misdirections, and finding my own place that makes me feel comfortable where I am, you know.
Yeah, I just think it was like really kind of also powerful too, that you know, with all the misdirection, that he did take that sort of kernel of advice and reach out to his friends and sort of have that sort of moment of sort of shining light upon it, and also like getting that comfort from friends, and sort of all the weird stories too. Like my ex was, you know, like with the roommate, and like my ex was molested, and she was like the worst person ever. And like there's, but which is so honest. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about your film that I really love, is it super authentic. Like, and I feel like as men, like we don't often see that sort of authenticity, like especially when it comes to trauma. Like you know, we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to, like, you know, toe the line, we're supposed to, like, you know, survive, but oftentimes it is so cataclysmic that it's hard to navigate, and we become broken and damaged, obviously. But to like the sort of the portrayal of that sort of navigation was really hopeful in many ways, and that's one of the things that really kind of responded to me about your film, is that it did have that sort of like authenticity, which is so well appreciated. And I'm sure others who see it are going to like pick up on that as well.
Thanks, and that's a testament to Sheldon and Kieran, like being real every day, and bringing me into the moment, because I really hadn't acted before this, and it's because of them.
But I think it was, I honestly say, if you've never acted before, that you did a great job, because you sold it really well throughout the film. And I really kind of love the sort of the relation between you and Sheldon too, like that relationship, that sort of like falling in love kind of thing too. Like you nailed it. Like you really kind of nailed it too. And um that it was sort of really like first boyfriends as well was also kind of like really interesting, because we often don't see that sort of like, it's almost like a bisexual kind of identity sort of portrayed in it. And also, like, usually when we think of bisexuals in sort of queer cinema, it's always women. We don't often see the sort of male perspective of bisexuality, and I thought that was also really kind of interesting as well, now that you're back on the D.
Can never get too far.
Right. So Kieran, the look of the film is really kind of like interesting and amazing. I loved the sort of moments with the water and that sort of like reflection that was used. What was sort of the impetus behind sort of like kind of choosing that sort of like aesthetic to it and that sort of look to it? Because it really makes it kind of distinct as well.
It's so sad to me because I had so much to say about every other question, and then this one, I'm like, that was really Matt and Eric. Eric is our amazing DP. No, you don't. I'm a sex abuse survivor myself, and I went kind of the reverse journey. But yesterday, I had like a life imitating art moment. Talk with. I finally had my first therapy session in like 15 years, and I swear it was like talking to the receptionist. It was like ticking off things like I had to like slow down the conversation and change the tone and be like, you're talking about sensitive things here. Maybe we're not like checking boxes. It was crazy. Um, but sorry, as on to answer your question on this, yeah, the visual language, what I have I would weigh in last and be like, uh-huh. No. Um, oh, the Freedom Tower wasn't fully built then, so we can't use that reflection. So yeah, it was a little here and there. I really can't take much credit for the visual artistry there. But Eric Schleicher is our amazing DP who understands visual storytelling like no one I have ever met. And Matt also has an amazing sensibility. And also Matt is being modest. I watched him act in something that was my introduction to him. Something he acted in
That
direct.
was a real thing. I was like 2 seconds.
And then we were in acting class together because I recommended
floating
that.
head.
And that was when we first connected on childhood sexual abuse because I was working on a scene from that. As an actor, this is the first thing I've ever directed. I've never gotten the chance to actually like professionally work on a role who dealt with those issues. But this work that Matt wrote was so brave and so good and so close to home. I thought this would be a really great project to explore that through. And then Sheldon, this is the script I read before Sheldon was even shot, and then Sheldon very bravely offered what he was going through in real time to us and to this story and made this film what it is, um, so that's where we all fit.
And
I guess
just
this
have
would,
to once again uplift Eric Schleicher, who was our DP and was a one-man band and put it in filming all of this. I mean, holding his equipment and running through like running on the train, the subway as we're like getting on the different cars and sitting across from us on and like Ferris wheels at Coney Island, catching all of these moments that I didn't even know was happening in the film. And I mean, just a complete wonderful eye. Matt as well. Matt is being so modest about it, but walking down the street and Matt being like, "Did you get that? Did you get the reflection from the sun? Did you get that leaf right there? And did you get that shadow?" We're walking up on this, and so it's a lot of talent, a lot of attention to detail from this team for sure.
Oh, y'all are so sweet. I wish Eric was here.
Me too.
Yeah, me
we
too.
do now. So I mean, obviously, you guys have like bonded sort of in this project, and unfortunately, it's under a lot of sort of like traumatic sort of revisionism. Do you feel like making this film that you have a little bit of that catharsis, or moving towards that catharsis?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just had this conversation yesterday that I cannot believe that 3 months out of the hospital, I shot a movie and that I would like talk about what was it that I just experienced. And wasn't doing journal entries. I didn't immediately go to therapy. I didn't really have the time to really process it in the way that I needed to. And a lot of that work was happening on this film. And I am so grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that. And I just less than, a year, 2 years later, here we are, and in such blessings from that moment. And so I just think that it's so important. It's so important to be able to add voice to what you're going through, and being able to accept and embrace that and share that with the world. And so many people have found healing, and support from that, and have reached out about that. And so that just feels really good.
That's great. Anybody else want to chime in?
I mean, it's been cathartic for sure. It's come in waves. Like I didn't have my first panic attack until I was like 19. So trauma's funny like that. It'll just sneak up on you when you're like having a good time. And then it'll go away for a little and then it'll come back in a new form. It's always like molting and evolving. And yeah, shooting it was very cathartic. And then the editing was like, I never want to see this movie again. I don't want to like look at this person. I'm done. And then the love that we've gotten from the festival circuit and even the little messages on Instagram have been just everything. And having one guy say, oh, this is the reason that like Gil, for instance, in the end of the montage, the molested montage, she's talking about how she was abused as a kid. She was being real. She had come out to us in front of the entire crew, and it was like moments like that everything felt right. Yeah, I don't want to leave too soon, but I can stick around for one more question.
Okay. I guess my final question, since I don't want to like leave it too soon, is now that the film is done, and bravo for the sort of the authenticity and the bravery that this film sort of like portrays. What is next for all of you? Are you going to collaborate on something new, or Cicada Part 2? Because I think that like you kind of left it in this way that we could revisit the characters, if needed.
I mean, I would be open to that. We've talked about it briefly. Doing something like a before sunrise, before sunset. What are these characters doing in 10 years, and 10 years after that, and 10 years after that? Sheldon, like Kieran, I mean, what are we?
Yeah, what are we going to be doing in 2033?
I don't want to see the age progression.
Sam's definitely like, he's at the very top government official. He's like a secretary of something.
There you go.
Secretary of Psychological Repair.
Yeah, psychological repair. Yeah.
I like that.
Through data tech.
Klonopin is still kicking.
Yeah, Klonopin was kicking in the movie though too. Was that anybody's dog, or where did Klonopin come from? Because they're kind of fabulous as an actor.
Yeah, Klonopin, aka Guillermo, was a friend of a friend's dog, and actually passed last year. So will not be CGI though. If Klonopin's open to it. But
did we not dedicate the film? We didn't dedicate the film to Guillermo?
Dedicated. We've dedicated before.
Okay.
We'll dedicate again.
Okay.
On the physical release, that can be the dedication credit.
Yeah, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Oscars.
Here you go.
But I mean, what I really want to kind of like end this with too is, and I could talk about this forever, to be honest, like, because there's so much to unpack with this film, and it was really kind of wonderful and so freaking brave of a journey for all of you, and the sort of like to be that brave to tell your story and to sort of put it on film is a marvel, and to feel that you can share that with an audience is really great, because we all sort of benefit from it. So I have to say thank you so much for sort of going there with and being that brave to sort of like tell this story, because it is important for a lot of us out here who are suffering and also want to sort of fall in love with our characters as well, as sort of, not, I want to say broken, but slightly broken gents. So, gently broken, I guess. I don't know. But I
I
really,
want to give you a hug.
me too. Like,
Heart.
exactly. And my cat Jacques keeps popping out of here. He wants to give hugs as well. So,
Aw.
but yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sort of like, one, spending time with us and kind of talking about the film, but also really making this film. And I want as many people as possible to see it. So I wish you well on the festival success, and hopefully beyond that as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you
I have-
so much. Yes.
so anybody who has not seen Cicada, what are you waiting for? It's playing on Wicked Queer's Zerb TV's virtual cinema from April 8th to the 18th. More information and tickets, go to www.wickedqueer.org. Again, Kieran, Matt, and Sheldon, thank you so much for sitting down. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to do this again because I want the sort of before Cicada sort of chat as well when that movie happens.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Next festival, we're there. We're having some Dunkin' Donuts all together, and
Yes,
go wild.
Dunkin' Donuts and some Sam Adams
Exactly.
or something like that. So,
Yeah, oh, man. Yeah. East Coast. Here we go.
right. So thank you all for being part of this.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.